Year 2000. 6-year-old Dedrick Owens finds a Davis Industries P32 pistol in his uncle's house and without much thought brings it to school. During the break, the boy first boasts about the weapon to his classmates, and later, on his way to another class, he encounters Kayla Rowland on the stairs, a girl he has an unrequited crush on. He tells her he doesn't like her and shoots her. The bullet hits a vital artery in her arm and the girl dies. Terrified, Dedrick runs away, throws the gun away, and hides in the restroom. Such behavior proves that despite his claims, he understands the gravity of his actions. Teachers and police officers find him sitting in the corner of the restroom. Despite the heinous crime, Owens faced no punishment. Many states in the USA simply do not consider crimes committed by children under the age of 7, as it is believed that a child of such young age cannot act with intent. Hello everyone! In today's video, we'll tell you another story about juvenile criminals. But unlike Dedrick Owens, they all eventually faced varying degrees of punishment. Without further ado, let's get started. And we'll start with the girls who became victims of pop culture and their mental illnesses. In 2014, 12-year-olds Morgan Gazer and Anissa Wire lured their classmate Peyton Lutner into the woods and attempted to stab her. 19 knife wounds, including 2 to vital organs, all for the sake of appeasing Slender Man, a character from internet stories. Peyton survived, crawled to the road where she was noticed and taken to the hospital. Just 5 hours after the incident, Morgan and Anissa were apprehended with the murder weapon in their bag. The girls didn't hide the reason for their actions. They wanted to meet Slender Man at his mansion, called Slender Mansion in the Nicolet National Forest, 200 miles away from their location. Despite Peyton's empathy and their feeling of guilt for causing her pain, both considered the crime a necessary evil. In the end, the court recognized their unhealthy state, especially in Morgan's case, who had experienced hallucinations from an early age, often communicated with imaginary characters, and had imaginary friends. Despite this, the case was tried as if committed by adults, not minors. Anissa was sentenced to at least 20 years in a mental health facility, possibly for life. Morgan's minimum term of imprisonment is 40 years. If their conditions are normalized, they will be released from the facility under the supervision of social services. Peyton Lutner recovered and enrolled in medical school. This story inspired screenwriters, and the most detailed material on this case was released by the NVO channel in the form of a mini-series called Beware of Slender Man. On the other hand, 15-year-old John Silva was denied clemency, and he will serve a life sentence. Had he been an adult at the time of the murder, it would not have been without the death penalty. This is because in 2000 he was found guilty of first-degree murder. On May 26, 2000, Silva confessed to kidnapping 12-year-old Jerry Lee Alley Jr., gagging him and tying him up with wires and bandages so tightly that he suffocated. Realizing that the boy had died, Silva dumped Jerry Lee's body into a septic tank container. The police found Jerry Lee's body 3 days later. Silva also left a detailed description of the murder nearby. During the trial, the killer did not deny his guilt, but never explained the reason or motive for his brutality. The following story takes place in 1994. Eric Smith, a red-haired 13-year-old boy with floppy ears covered in freckles, is declared guilty in court of second-degree murder. His victim, 4-year-old Darren Robbie. He was walking to summer camp at a local park when Smith lured him to a deserted spot hidden by trees, where Smith strangled the boy, undressed, and physically and sexually abused him before smashing his head in with a rock. A week later, Smith confessed to his mother that he had killed Darren. The family reported the matter to the police the same day. The teenager was examined by doctors and found no physical cause, whether it be a brain disorder or an imbalance in hormone levels, to explain such an attack of aggression towards the child. As it turned out, Smith himself was a victim of bullying at school. He was spanked for his looks and ookies. No one wanted to be friends with him. Psychiatrists believed that this may have been the cause of the attack of aggression. Until adulthood, Smith served his sentence in a juvenile correctional facility, and after the age of 21, he was transferred to a maximum security colony. where he stayed until February 2022. His 11th petition for parole was approved, and after 27 years of incarceration and remorse, Eric Smith was released. Another victim-turned-torturer, Christian Fernandez, was physically and sexually abused by his cousin at a very young age, which also affected his behavior in school. There were instances where he was beaten and bullied. When Christian was 12 in 2011, he was left to babysit his 2-year-old half-brother David, despite the fact that one such babysitting session had previously resulted in a broken leg for David. Although the description of that day has changed many times, there are a few facts that have remained constant. Christian first yelled at the boy and then pushed him a couple times towards a bookcase, which later resulted in a head injury for the boy. Christian brought his mom to the dying child as soon as she arrived, but Bianella spent the next 4 hours Googling concussion symptoms instead of calling an ambulance in time, which later made her an accessory to murder in the eyes of the judge. The prosecutor, on the other hand, insisted on trying Christian as an adult. The judge agreed to such a suggestion, explaining it was an attempt to shield society from the violent person the child would grow into. Psychologists noted that Christian is already impossible to fix. He thinks calculatingly, plays a defenseless and innocent child, while inside him lives a formed killer. Isn't it too cruel for premeditated murder, you ask? And the fact is that the court questioned the status of manslaughter. After all, the investigation revealed that Christian had regularly raped David. The court was looking at a life sentence for the boy and 30 years of high security for the mother as an accessory to the crime. In the end, Christian's lawyers succeeded in getting some of the testimony overturned, and a deal was struck with the prosecutor's office. Christian pleaded guilty as a juvenile to aggravated manslaughter, which gave him the right to apply for parole. Christian's mother, on the other hand, was given a 10-year sentence by the court. In 2018, when Christian turned 19, he was released with some restrictions. Another story of how violence begets new violence. Ashley Martonson witnessed her father beating her mother since she was a child. The town in Kansas where the family lived was small. The police didn't even have to give an address. They'd come out when they heard a name. When Ashley was 6, her mother left her father and quickly got into a new relationship. When Ashley was 9, her stepfather raped her. Ashley's mother would find new men and the cycle would repeat itself. Until in 2011, Ashley's mother got into a relationship and married Thomas Ayers, a convicted illegal gun-carrying hunting enthusiast. Thomas turned out to be a paranoid man who not only physically abused Ashley and his own daughters, he also forbade Ashley to be alone with her mother for fear that they would conspire behind his back. But that wasn't enough. He found Ashley a part-time job and took all the money she earned for himself. In March 2015, when she turned 17, her parents found out that Ashley was dating a guy 5 years older than her and tried to limit their communication. Ashley tried to leave home. She even drove a few kilometers away when Thomas caught up with her in a car, dragged her into the car by her hair, and brought her back home. He threatened to lock her up at home and not let her go anywhere for a year. When Ashley imagined what hell such a captivity would be like, she grabbed a loaded shotgun and ran to her room, thinking she'd have to kill herself. Thomas was yelling. Thomas was breaking down the door. And when he appeared in the doorway and hurled a 3-story profanity at Ashley, she shot him, deciding that she didn't have to die if her tormentor died. The first shot she fired wounded him in the neck, and the second shot to the head proved fatal. But the story doesn't end there. When Ashley's mother heard the shots, she grabbed a knife and ran to the second floor. When she saw Ashley, she started yelling at her, and even wounded her in the leg. A struggle ensued. As a result, forensic experts counted 30 stab wounds on the body of Jennifer, Ashley's mother. Ashley was arrested as an especially dangerous armed criminal a couple of days after the incident in a neighboring state. Forensics revealed she had post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder, which she had suffered from since she was about 8 years old. Because the crime was committed the day after her 17th birthday, Ashley was sentenced to 40 years in prison, including 23 years in prison and 17 years of supervision. And paradoxically, Ashley has remarked on more than one occasion in interviews that she feels much freer and safer in prison. Many stories from this video end with murderers petitioning for parole. You might think that's unfair. What freedom for murderers? But that's because of a change in the law in 2012, when the Supreme Court ruled that unconditionally imposing life sentences without parole for those who committed a crime before the age of 18 is not constitutional. That's why many of the stories on our list today come with a but. And how this parole happens will be easiest to explain with the following example. 1997. 14-year-old Rina Verk, a girl from a family who recently immigrated from India to Canada, became another victim of a bout of teenage cruelty. She was invited to a party by a friend. The teens were drinking and smoking on a bridge when the company started bullying Rina. One of the instigators burned her forehead with a cigarette. Then the company started beating the girl. After she made an attempt to run away, Kelly Ellard and Warren Paul Glowacki caught up with Rina, forced her to take off her shoes, and continued to beat her. At one point, Ellard began drowning Verk, which ultimately caused her death. She was 15 at the time of the crime, and he was 16, which played a role in the sentencing. Yes, the sentence sounds like life, but with the right to apply for parole after 7 years. In such cases, when judges agree that the juvenile offender is remorseful, for starters he or she is given leniency. Namely, inmates are allowed to participate in social activities during the day and required to return to prison each night. All of this is done to facilitate socialization. So Kelly Ellard even gave birth to 2 children. Rina Verk's family was not against the parole process for Ellard and Glowacki, and even supported it. And yet there are stories and minors who are not affected by this change in the law. On February 2, 1996, 14-year-old Barry Dale Lukaitis dressed up as a Wild West gunslinger and took his father's hunting rifle, semi-automatic pistol and revolver to school. Waiting for algebra class, he shot his algebra teacher, 2 of his classmates, and seriously wounded another classmate. Barry took the rest of the students prisoner. According to his plan, Barry disguised himself as one of the students and wanted to leave the school, but coach John Lane interfered with those plans and disarmed the shooter and turned him over to the police. Yeah, not everything was okay with his mental state. Doctors were talking about bipolar affective disorder or clinical depression, which Barry was genetically predisposed to. All was not well within the Lukaitis family either. The overbearing mother, who had filed for divorce a year before the shooting because of her husband's affair on the side, had spent months planning and talking to her son about a double suicide on Valentine's Day. Her son talked her out of it. The court considered all of these reasons, but did not consider them valid. Barry was tried as an adult, and for 2 first-degree murders and 1 second-degree murder. Plus, for attempted first-degree murder, he received 2 life sentences and plus 205 years in custody. Such terms are given in the US so that a convicted person is not eligible for parole. Still, Barry tried to fix that by taking advantage of a 2012 law. And in 2017, despite Barry finishing his high school education and taking college courses part-time, he was left in custody. A sentence of life in prison and 189 years in custody remained in effect. The story goes that Barry learned law, and within the walls of the prison, he works part-time as a paralegal, helping inmates with their appeals. Unfortunately, this is only a small part of the stories in which children have turned out to be very cruel and give a head start to many adults. There have been cases of juvenile executions in history, but for the most part, these cases were left in other eras that seemed less relevant to us. We hope you learned something new from today's video. See you on the channel.